A warm welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Here's what's coming up within the half hour. The World Health Organization says cases of Ebola may be spreading faster than originally thought. Father of 8 children killed in the San Diego mosque shooting in the United States. Plus, one security officer killed, 18 others injured in a car bomb explosion in Damascus, Syria. Let's begin the world today. The Russian President Vladimir Putin is in China today for a meeting with President Xi Jinping. It's a visit that comes a few days after the U.S. President Donald Trump was in the country for talks with the Chinese president. Moscow dismissed suggestions that the timing of Putin's trip was linked to Trump's visit. However, analysts say the back-to-back diplomacy reflects shifting dynamics in the international system. Jiang Jing, deputy director of the Center for Russian Studies at East China Normal University, said the meetings underscore increasing coordination between China, Russia, and the United States at a time when global institutions are becoming less effective. Putin has long viewed Russia's partnership with China as a strategic counterbalance to the West, but analysts say perceptions of the relationship are evolving, especially after Trump's recent engagement with Beijing. China now remains Russia's largest customer for oil and gas exports, and Moscow expects tensions in Iran to drive energy demand even higher. Beijing has also faced Western criticism for continuing to supply high-tech components allegedly used in Russia's defense industry. The death toll continues to rise from the Ebola outbreak in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Officials are now saying at least 131 deaths have been reported, with more than 513 suspected cases. A spokesperson for the government says cases are now being reported over a wider area, according to the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. There have also been 2 confirmed cases and 1 death in neighboring Uganda. This marks the DRC's 17th Ebola outbreak since 1976. It began in late April in Bunia and Mungwalu mining zone. The crisis has hit just months after the 16th outbreak ended in December, which recorded 64 cases and 45 deaths. The country's deadliest epidemic, spanning from 2018 to 2020, claimed nearly 2,300 lives. The African CDC warns that ongoing rebel violence and mass displacement in the region are heavily complicating contact tracing efforts. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump has raised concerns over the outbreak after 1 American tested positive and was evacuated to Germany.
Concerned about everything, but certainly am. I think that, it's been confined right now to Africa, but it's something that has had a breakout.
Meanwhile, the World Health Organization has warned that Ebola virus may be spreading faster than originally thought. Modeling by the London-based MRC Center for Global Infectious Disease Analysis, released on Monday, suggested that there had been substantial underdetection, and it could not rule out that there had already been more than 1,000 cases. The study suggested that the current outbreak is larger than currently ascertained, and that its true magnitude remains uncertain. Meanwhile, in the United States, the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the Department of Homeland Security, and other appropriate federal agencies are taking proactive measures to protect the health and safety of the American public in response to the outbreak. It follows reports that an American tested positive in the DRC. The CDC is implementing targeted public health measures intended to reduce the risk of Ebola caused by the Budibio virus by preventing its introduction into the U.S. Now, according to the agency, the actions are based on certain and current epidemiological evidence, ongoing risk assessments, and highly serious nature of the disease. It says the order will be in effect for 30 days, effective immediately. Back here in Nigeria, the Center of the Nigeria Civil Aviation Authority has directed airlines, airport operators, and other aviation stakeholders to intensify public health surveillance measures following the outbreak of the Ebola virus disease in parts of the DRC. In a circular dated May 18, 2026, the NCAA said the directive became necessary due to growing concerns over the spread of the disease and the critical role of the aviation sector in preventing cross-border transmission. As part of preventive measures, flight crews must strictly comply with the Nigeria Civil Aviation Regulations by completing and submitting aircraft general declaration forms for all suspected health threats. Under these updated directives, pilots in command are required to immediately notify air traffic control of any suspected communicable disease cases detected on board an aircraft. The regulator also asks operators to reinforce crew training on the identification and management of communicable diseases and ensure strict adherence to infection prevention and control guidelines. In addition, the authorities stated that disease surveillance systems at airports have been strengthened, while contact tracing, case reporting mechanisms, and border health screening procedures are also being reinforced. Now, yesterday at the World Health Assembly in Geneva, Switzerland, WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus said the road down which many countries are now walking is one our forefathers led 78 years ago. He emphasized WHO's transformation over the past 9 years in three key areas: strengthening science and data systems, improving emergency preparedness after COVID-19, and reforming WHO's financing model to make it more stable and independent.
With purpose and commitment. There are three key areas in which WHO has transformed: science, emergencies, and finance, among others. Now, I would like to update you briefly on the comprehensive process of prioritization and realignment that we have undergone in the past 16 months. Although the first two increases in assessed contribution cushioned the impact of the funding cuts we faced, they could not insulate us fully. In close consultation with member states, we reduced our program budget and undertook a rigorous analysis of every office and every program. Unfortunately, we were left with no choice but to say goodbye to a large number of dedicated, hard-working colleagues. In the past year, many countries have experienced severe disruptions due to sudden and steep cuts in the development assistance. Those disruptions and the damage they caused to the health of individuals, families, and communities were regrettable and avoidable.
Joining us now is Professor of Infectious Diseases Epidemiology and Director, Global Health and Infectious Diseases Control Institute in Nasarawa State University, Dr. Akiala Ishaku. He joins us from Kefi. Dr. Ishaku, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me. Good evening, Nigerians. And
17 outbreaks of Ebola in just a few years, since 1976, I believe. How much pressure do you think this puts on any country's health system, and how effectively can that country continue to contain these outbreaks?
Definitely, if you look at the time series analysis for the outbreak of Ebola, you will discover that one of the greatest epidemic that led to a pandemic was in 2014. And we also had the outbreak in 2018, and then subsequent pockets of outbreak. But what is quite unique about the outbreak is that it is being caused by a single strain of a variant, which is the Zaire variant. But the latest outbreak that we had was caused by a different variant, referred to as the Bodin-Gyungyom variant. And so this variant does not have vaccines, does not have treatment, although the Zaire variant, there are clinical trials of the vaccines. What this means to countries is that every country needs to be on alert. You know, with globalization and international travels, those are the catalysts and drivers of emerging and re-emerging diseases like that of the Ebola. So countries need to be on alert. And you know, with globalization and international trades, it is very easy for you to leave one country to the other. And so I like the prelude, the introduction you made about civil aviation of Nigeria, putting a searchlight, you know, activating the surveillance framework around our air border. But what happens to our sea border? What happens to also our land border? So we need to have a holistic activation of our surveillance framework in all the borders, be it land, be it air, be it water border. So pressure will be more on countries because that will definitely have impacts. If there's an outbreak of a single case in any country, it shows that that country will be designated as a global health security threat country. And so every country will be on alert.
Right. So while they're being on alert, that also involves, improving their own health architecture and adjusting it to fit what is the current reality. I know that when there was a first case reported in Nigeria, at the time of the late Dr. Adadevo, who fortunately was at the forefront and unfortunately lost her life, to that outbreak, we seem to have handled it really well. Do we have the infrastructure right now to handle an outbreak possibly in Nigeria if there was one?
Definitely. You remember during Patrick Sawyer in 2014, where you actually gave, that case study, predating after COVID-19, after the Ebola in 2014, we had COVID-19 in 2019 and 2020, there about 2021, 2022. That tested our healthcare system resilient. In time past, we used to think maybe we have a very fractured healthcare system, or do we have before the Ebola and then the COVID? But there has been a lot that has been achieved in terms of building capacity, in terms of diagnostic capacity, in terms of surveillance, also in terms of understanding the dynamics of also the infection prevention control, and then also awareness, just like what Channels is doing now in terms of public health advocacy. This is quite key. There is no limitation to public health advocacy, no limitation to communication, public health communication. So we have the capacity in country to handle that. It's just that we just need to do more. We need to strengthen our diagnostic capacity. We need to also strengthen our surveillance capacity. Even if it is in time past been very, very passive, we need to have a paradigm shift now to an active surveillance framework status so that we can be able to pick any suspicious cases and then begin to raise awareness among our health personnel to treat every case now as a suspicious index for Ebola virus. This is quite key. So I strongly believe, Amarachi, that we have the capacity in country, but we need to do more in terms of widening up the scope of our surveillance systems.
Right. And it does seem like, all of the spotlight is on the health system, to do this for us, but individuals also have a responsibility. So what
Absolutely.
can
we have
we
responsibilities.
do? Yeah.
Amarachi, once we take care of, once we deployed the non-pharmaceutical measures that we had during COVID, we take care of Ebola. We take care of just simple washing of our hands. We avoid overcrowded places. We maintain social distance. We have an improved health-seeking behavior. Anytime one is sick, you should seek medical attention from appropriate authorities. Those are kind of non-pharmaceutical measures that we need to activate. So I agree with you on the government part. Certain things need to be put in place. But as citizens, we need to take responsibilities of adhering to measures, preventive measures for the transmission of infectious diseases, not limited to Ebola, but also to COVID-19, to also Lassa fever and other diseases that are quite endemic. So I agree with you. We need to take responsibilities as individuals, collectively as citizens of Nigeria.
Dr. Akiala Ishaku, can't thank you enough for this public advocacy you have given us. Thank you again for joining us on the program.
Thank you, Amarachi, for having me.
We're off on a short break now on The World Today. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Irish Prime Minister Michael Martin has condemned as unacceptable that Irish citizens who were taking part in an aid flotilla to Gaza have been detained by Israel. Dr. Margaret Connolly, sister of Irish President Catherine Connolly, is one of the 12 citizens. The flotilla organizers said 10 boats and a 60-vessel convoy were intercepted in international waters and boarded by Israeli forces on Monday morning. Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said the raid was effectively neutralizing a malicious plan designed to break the isolation we have imposed on Hamas terrorists in Gaza. President Connolly, who's on a 3-day visit to England, has said the incident is quite upsetting and he is very proud of his sister, even though he's also very worried about her. A security officer was killed, up to 18 people injured in a car bomb attack today near a building belonging to the Syrian Transitional Government's Ministry of Defense in the Bab Sharqi district of Damascus. We're looking at heavy destruction at the scene with security personnel and ambulance crews in the area. There were damaged vehicles and shattered debris also visible. The Media and Communications Directorate of the Ministry of Defense said an army unit had discovered an explosive device prepared for detonation near a ministry building in Bab Sharqi and had attempted to dismantle it. The statement adds that a car bomb then exploded in the same area, killing one soldier and injuring several others with varying degrees of severity. Najib Al-Nassan, Director of Emergency and Ambulance Services at the Ministry of Health, said that the blast left 18 casualties, all of whom were transferred to nearby hospitals for treatment. At least 6 people have been killed after several more injured after a gunman opened fire at several locations in southern Turkey. According to the state media, the suspect has been identified. His 37-year-old Metin O. Authorities say he first shot and killed his former wife in the street before driving to Tarsus and opening fire at a restaurant, killing the owner and an employee. He's also suspected of later killing a teenager, a 50-year-old man, and another person in a separate neighborhood. Media reports say the attack has triggered a large-scale manhunt involving police units, helicopters and drones. Meanwhile, the motive for the attack remains unclear as investigation continues. Elsewhere, 5 people have been killed, including a security guard, after 2 teenage gunmen opened fire outside the Islamic Center of San Diego in Claremont. Police and the FBI are investigating the attack as a possible hate crime. Reports indicate that the 2 teenage suspects were found dead from self-inflicted gunshot wounds in a car near the scene. Hate speech was scrawled on one of the weapons, and a suicide note containing writings about racial pride was also found. The Islamic Center is the largest mosque in San Diego County. The attack came at the start of Dhul Hijjah, one of the holiest periods in the Islamic calendar, and just days before the Eid al-Adha. Meanwhile, the San Diego Muslim community and residents are raising concerns over fears of being targeted after the deadly mosque attack.
It's a sad thing that's happening in this country. I think everybody is being affected. Our leadership is not supporting it. I think that we've got a number of people who are talking about violence. They're looking at solutions that aren't about compassion. And I think that we need to move in a different direction. And as a school, we were moving in that direction. This is a welcoming city. We open our arms to refugees and to people who are leaving other places and want to find security. San Diego is a safe city. Our mayor believes that. Our chief of police believes that. And our community supports that.
It makes me feel really uncomfortable, and it's very scary for all Middle Easterners, regardless of religion, Christian, Muslim. This affects all of us, and we can be targeted just by the way we look, the dark hair and the deep features. We can just be a target. It's just been very violent throughout the last few years. So I believe it's a hate crime. I believe that Muslims are being targeted, Muslims and Middle Easterners. Just like I said, you can be targeted just by the way you look, and you don't necessarily have to be a Christian or a Muslim, and you'll still get targeted. So it's a very scary world out there right now.
Well, San Diego Police Chief Scott Wall says officers had been in contact with the mother of one of the shooters before the incident occurred. He says a teen gunman's mother initially reported her son as missing and feared he was suicidal. She then warned police that several of her weapons were missing, along with her vehicle. Wall said officers received the first active shooter calls at around 11:40 a.m. local time, and that between 50 and 100 officers converged on the mosque within 4 minutes, finding 3 victims dead outside the center.
We received a call of a runaway juvenile. After speaking with the mom began to piece together bits and pieces of information over an extended period of time. The information that she was gathering and conveying to us began to elevate the threat level that we were perceiving with this information. She believed her son was suicidal, and she began to share information that several of her weapons were missing. Her vehicle was missing, in addition to her son. She also said that her son was with a companion.
We'll be ending with a separate incident where 11 people have been injured after a bus plunged into a tree and an electric pole in central Tel Aviv, cutting power to the area. One local eyewitness described the scene, saying one bus tried to overtake another before crashing into a building. A large emergency response team of rescue workers and police are currently investigating the crash site. Medics report that among the injured were an 11-year-old girl in critical condition, a 49-year-old woman, and a 76-year-old man in serious condition. Several others are also in hospital for varying degrees of injuries. And that's the world today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubani.